Hello, everybody. Dumelang. Welcome to Blooming But I Fly. Some people say Blooming Butterfly. Whichever one, rocks your boat as long as you're having a blooming life journey. So, for those of you who have not subscribed yet, please click the button. Let's grow the community. Let's think out loud together. Let's journey together. Today's guest, I am so excited. I call him my friend, but you guys know him as the what?
As a coach?
As the superstar coach, I would say. Mzwakhe Nkosi, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. But let me put some respect on your name and introduce you properly. Mzwakhe Nkosi is a South African professional rugby union coach, and he's currently the head coach of the Lions, which participates in the Currie Cup. And you are a child of God. You are a husband. You are a father, and you are a friend to many of us. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation. You're very generous in your introduction.
No, I must give props where
All that I do is coach people how to play rugby, and hopefully
for one of the biggest rugby teams in South Africa.
Granted, and yeah, hopefully we can have a good conversation. And I look forward to joining with you in the next hour or so.
Yeah. So here on Blooming Butterfly, we're firm believers that, the life cycle is continuous. You are forever blooming. A lot of people see you on TV. A lot of people know, that side of you. Today, I want to take them back to behind the scenes of the man behind the man. Okay? So you grew up in Soweto, Diepkloof. Just talk me through your childhood. Talk me through how, growing up where you grew up with the family you had shaped the person that we have come to know today.
Yeah, as you stated, I grew up in Diepkloof Extension in Soweto. I grew up as part of a community. Funny enough, the people who we grew up with still live in the cul-de-sac. And yeah, I'm one of five, two sisters, two brothers. I'm the middle child, so definitely middle child syndrome.
Yeah.
I've got a friend for myself. But yeah, I had an unreal upbringing. I've only have happy memories of my upbringing. My parents were present for me. My parents are civil servants. I'm the son of a policeman and a nurse. Those are two professions that black people at the time, if you think my parents were born in the 1950s, could aspire to in terms of blue collar jobs outside of being servants and maids, in the previous dispensation. So yeah, and they provide a whole variety of opportunities for us. I think about the school I went to and the school we went to, rather, from a primary school point of view, and again, only quality memories. And I think I'm a sport fanatic, and that has a whole lot to do with the way I was brought up, with the way, we played outside. We played for long. I played sport at primary school, all sorts of sport. No matter how good or bad I was supported by my parents, albeit not always physically because they had to work, but encouraged and supported. And I grew up, I guess, my siblings are community. There's quite a number of us. So again, that's I learned to grow up in a community. So that's sort of in a nutshell, what my upbringing looks like.
Yeah. I mean, you describe your childhood as unreal. It sounds like you really have fond memories and the sense of community, and you're saying that Diepkloof Valley, there's still that cul-de-sac, and you're saying that people are still there. Now, I've always experienced you as somebody who, has such a strong sense of confidence. Where does that come from? Is it what you've mentioned, the upbringing? It actually used to get you into trouble a lot at school with the teachers. Like, you were deemed naughty,
Yes.
always putting you back in your place. Where does that sense of confidence come from?
Yeah, again, I'm grateful to my parents who I think are leaders in their own right. My dad for a long time was the head of the Metro Police in Joburg. Probably shouldn't say that too loudly. And my mom a leader in church and my dad a leader in church, as well as the community. My dad for for lack of a better description, is the family patriarch. But another thing is they enabled an environment for us to speak up, not speak out necessarily, but speak up, and not sort of mute our voices, and encourage us to be our own people. Even though we had quite a number of siblings, they encouraged us to be our own people, and that in itself, I think, can only foster confidence in who that particular person is. And I hope to give the same, or even if half of what my parents gave me, in the environment they enabled or created for me, to my son. And hopefully he can also, be independent and find his sense of identity sooner rather than later.
Yeah, yeah. I remember your father, like, when he would drop you off at school in his uniform, and he'd, like, command, like, silent respect is what I would say, and I always got the sense that you respected your dad. You didn't fear your dad. Would you agree? Like, what was your relationship like with your dad, and how has it shaped you now as you're talking about being a father?
Yeah, I think one thing about my old man is that he had a sense of identity, proud of what he did, proud of who he was. So I guess that sort of comes off on you and rubs off on his kids. And we were really proud of, my dad wasn't a lawyer or an accountant or whatever the case is. And I mentioned part of my upbringing being unreal is we didn't have a riches upbringing, so not possessions per se. And I think my prized possession as a youngster was my bicycle, and I rode that thing into the ground. But the memories we created. I mean, we went on holiday to camping, and as a result, I still camp today. So I've got lots of respect for him, and as I've grown up, I've taken the biggest thing, as I've mentioned, is his sense of identity and sense of who he is, and a lot of us, myself included, as we go along in a journey, we struggle to find that sense of identity of who we are.
Yeah, yeah. And your mom, so your mom was a nurse, and I never experienced you talking a lot about your mom, but when you did, you revered her. And I just get the sense that they were so different as parents. Like, how would you describe her and your relationship with her?
It's ironic. My mom, when we grew up, was a disciplinarian.
Okay.
And as we've evolved from an age point of view, my mom's become such a confidante of mine, and we almost speak daily, and we share life, and we actually so close. That's just how things have worked out. Not that I'm not close with my dad. We'll always have a close relationship, but it's interesting how my relationship with my mom has evolved. She's always the disciplinarian, getting us to school, getting us to do homework, getting us clean, getting us, as I've grown up into varsity and as a working guy, she's really become, someone who I confide in a lot, and I guess that the empathetic part of who she is, being a nurse by profession, allows her to play that sort of role in my life. So yeah, it's different. But yeah, like I said, I'm pretty cool with my parents, and I'm grateful to them, and we're getting to the age we were discussing off air how they retired. And that's a different thing for us, having now to take responsibility or start assuming responsibility for what they're like, and their health and their well-being is a challenge to me, and yeah, it's new territory, at least for what we're going into.
You're in the middle now, right? So, like, you taking care of a young child, you're taking care of your parents, and that is a new territory. The profession that your parents did, it consumes a lot of time, right? They worked a lot. Nurses have long working hours, yet you seem to have such a strong presence of them, in your identity and how you speak of them. And you now are in a career or field that takes a lot of time. You were just saying off air how you want to shift your parenthood. Can you tell me a bit about fatherhood? How that's? I know you've got he's what, two-year-old boy?
Old.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pulang, I think the fact that we parents now is a scary thing, but also privileged, man. I love how my parents raised us up. They raised us to be independent of them and of each other. I can imagine what a scary thought that is. I mean, you're a parent yourself, your daughter being independent of who you are.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because the very thing about parenthood is that attachment and the proverbial umbilical cord, but they raise us to be independent, raise us to, just to live our lives and do it. Again, this is the more I think about it, they don't have to say that in so many words, but the more I think about it, the more life isn't a dress rehearsal, right? We've got one shot at this thing,
Right.
you know. So parenthood has been an eye opening experience for me. It's required teamwork. It's required dynamic thinking on your feet, but also learning. You again, society portrays us into this box, and I'm just challenging myself to not be the typical dad. You know, I really want to be involved. I really want to be stuck in. Not that it's not a new thing, but I must change nappies. I must wake up. I must make bottles. I must get stuck in. You know, that's the way I see my role as a dad. I must make lunch. My lunch must be better than his mom's lunch. You know, he must be
Healthy
happy at
competition.
100%. You know, when I fetch him from school, he must be really happy to get me at school.
Yeah.
So that's the type of parent I'm looking for,
Yeah.
or to become. And again, parenthood is a journey, and I don't know if you end this journey, but it has its ups and downs.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see a little bit of yourself in your son? Who is he more similar to, you
I
or
hear
your wife?
myself in him,
Okay.
just in terms of how loud he is.
Okay. Okay.
I hear how loud he is, and again, I think we're privileged and fortunate to have he's an outgoing kid at the moment, an outgoing boy, so hopefully we've got the ability to nurture that, and we get the strength to nurture that outgoing ability.
Yeah.
I must mention he's left-handed, so he's got a point of difference. So hopefully he can be a left-handed batsman for South Africa.
Okay. And off air, you were saying how, just to link this thing of being a different kind of parent and being present, you were saying off air how you recognize in yourself that you don't have good self-care. And, you were saying after this, you need to fetch him from school, and he doesn't have to go to school if he doesn't want to. Just talk me through, these changes of parenthood where you feel that you want to shift, things that, you speak about your childhood as unreal and the positives. What didn't work? What needs to change? Nothing was perfect. Nothing is perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there isn't anything that's perfect. I choose gratitude more than negatives, because there are negatives. We must understand that. We didn't have the perfect childhood, but I choose to see the good that what my parents tried to give, what my family tried to give, in the absence of what they didn't give. Maybe perhaps I'm in a situation to give that.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And to link to self-care, we grow up in. I'll use my old man as an example. He worked for the JMPD for 46 years.
Sure, that's a long time.
But here's the thing, right? What's his legacy? Because they just knew criminals every day. One day they just had a farewell for him and he went, and the next guy came in. And then you start working out that, being a policeman must be what you do, not who you are.
Okay.
So much of our parents lived their professions, and their professions were, the first thing you said about my dad was he was a policeman. We spoke about my dad, the policeman, first before we spoke about my dad, the father, first.
Yeah.
And I want that different for myself, is I want to be a dad first, and being in rugby and coaching rugby must be what I do, not who I am, which is challenging. Obviously, it's incredibly challenging. It's probably the biggest battle I face is rugby mustn't be who I am. It must be what I do, even though it's a great deal of what I do.
Yeah, that's amazing, Mzwakhe. So I'm very interested in Black fatherhood. My research from master's all to PhD is all about that. And I'm always interested in both, men who are unable to father and those who then find themselves able to. How did you, for somebody who's listening out there, how did you get to a point where you are able to engage more in gratitude, or to say, you know what, it wasn't perfect. There are things that I wish or desired I could have had, but I'm in a position now to give it. How does one shift from that to that?
Hopefully, we all have friends. We all have people who we share life with. I'm one of few friends who say, guys, my dad's picking me up, or my dad picked me up. Or I went to a sporting event with my dad. Or yes, guys, I just need to chat to my dad. I need to borrow my dad's car.
Yeah.
I'm giving an example of how what fatherhood looks like for us as the contemporary youth, and what it looks like for us as black people. We've got an incredible amount of black kids who grow up without dads.
Yeah.
And mine and all of us, actually, not even mine, all of us, ours is to try and change that.
Yeah.
And then it's one thing to grow up with a dad; it's another thing to grow up with a present dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, a dad who invests,
Yeah.
a dad who's there for you. Not, and like I said, I don't think my old man gave me all the money in the world, but you see, we were rich in experiences we created for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and like I said, my childhood wasn't perfect, but we're rich in that in that regard. And mine is to, I think all of us, ours is to curb that trend. Is to
Yeah.
let's really be there, let's be present.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm fighting for that, invariably I'm going to be good for my son.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. And I mean, having gone to school with you, I can really see how now that, you know, moves one person from one place to another, because you really, you know, did have a solid sense of confidence. It's followed you through. You wouldn't be able to do what you're doing today if there wasn't that presence. You know, they were at every sort of parents' evening. They were at, you know, awards evenings. I just remember the presence that you're talking about. And you know, it's lovely to now see somebody later on in life, how that impacts them. Now, I want to shift a bit from your parents and your childhood and all of that, and speak about who you are now and what you do. No, not who you are, what you do. You corrected me. You are a leader, essentially. Your job requires leadership, you know. What makes a good leader?
Again, Hupulang, I'm passionate about leadership. It's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about being around people who are leaders and learning from them. There's a scripture, but there's also a saying. So, you know, in the scripture it says, where there's no leadership, the people will perish.
Okay.
You know what I'm trying to say? And I think leadership, and then the quote is, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I think that quote was taken from scripture. And I'm fortunate to be in a position to lead, you know, and what leadership does is it builds a conscience in you, because you've got to give other people direction, whether it's me leading at home or whether it's me leading at work. So I'm fortunate to be in a position of leadership at my place of employment.
Yeah.
And it's something that I relish.
Yeah. You played a lot of sports. You played rugby, you played cricket a little bit, you tried yourself out. Well, not tried yourself out. You were, you know, athletics and all sorts of things. Do you think that influenced you learning how to...
Dreamstream, a place to create yourself. Record video, music, and podcast in our full-service studio. Dreamstream, a place to create yourself. Record video, music, and podcast in our full-service studio. Dreamstream, a place to create yourself.
become a great leader?
Yeah, I think all of us are on a journey. But I mean, you're a leader in your own right. You know, what you're doing now with creating this podcast, with creating this awareness, the subjects that we're discussing is leadership, right? Okay. And we're here because you're shaped by a whole variety of experiences that you had. And similarly, like I'm shaped by. We played lots of team sports.
Yeah.
I loved athletics, but funny, I loved in the relay. I've got fond memories of us going to Prestige, where we had mixed relays. And I think teamwork, one thing teamwork does is it forces you to be conscious of other people. I think leadership's also a bit of, there's a talent in leadership, and I'm grateful that God's given me a little bit of, I wasn't at the back of the queue, but maybe.
I wasn't at the back of the queue.
And then, so having played team sports, having led a little bit in team sports, having got to lead early days as a young coach or as a young guy who started working, I think that made a difference for me, and it's allowed me, having worked. The other thing is having worked on incredible leaders.
Yeah.
I've had the fortune of, I don't know if our audience will know these people, but working under a guy called Carl Spellhaus, Joey Mongalo, Bafana Ntleko, who they themselves are leaders, and you pick up one or two things from those guys and you use, and we get stuff wrong. I mean, one thing I think I am is self-critical. So it's a journey. We're not perfect, so we're trying to lead and trying to get to what you say, to become a great leader. At the moment we're just leading.
Yeah.
So how do we get to great is the question.
Yeah. So all those sports that you played, why rugby? How did you gravitate towards that? Because you ended up playing for the Lions
Yeah.
yourself before actually becoming a
coach.
coach. Why rugby? You could have gone many directions. You were actually quite good in most of those sports. Yeah.
Look, I think athletics. I thought I was half decent at athletics,
Okay.
but lonely,
Okay.
really lonely sport. The training's lonely. Not as good. Basketball. Probably my genes just aren't good enough. Although I enjoyed basketball at school, cricket probably not as good at cricket. But I had something for rugby. I loved rugby. I enjoyed rugby. It attracted me to it. The teamwork, the yes, man. There's so many intangibles about being in rugby.
Yeah.
I can't explain what it's like to be in a winning change room. There's something about it. And I guess experiencing a bit of success. Sometimes we don't do things because we're good at them, or we don't do things because we love them. Sometimes we do it because we're good at them, and then we end up falling in love with them, and then they become our passion.
That is important, I think, for people to know, because I think sometimes you can feel like people do things that they love, and you saying now it can sometimes work the other way around. You trial and error something, you realize, hey, I'm good at this, and then it becomes something you invest in, but it wasn't necessarily your first love. Sometimes we go at the thing that we like, but we're not
Of course,
great at.
rugby could never be my first love. The only one in my family who played rugby to start off with.
Okay.
So it's not like we've got a history of watching my dad play rugby or watching. No, that's not the case. I mean, you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So once one becomes good at it, experience a tiny bit of success in it.
Yeah.
Once you fall in love with it a little bit, then that combination of I'm really good at this. I've grown to love this thing.
Yeah.
I like who I am when I'm in this thing. Therefore, I can go forward with it.
Right. Blooming into it.
There you go.
Blooming into
100%. So, and that's what blooming is, right?
Yeah.
It's how we nurture, something is nurtured, and the more it's nurtured, the more successfully it's nurtured, the more it blooms and it becomes something.
Yeah. But now rugby is an interesting one. It's predominantly a white sport, right? It's growing, it's shifting, and there's work being put into it. People like you being in it and being part of leadership. But it is predominantly a white sport. How has that experience been for you, being in that kind of field, first as a player and then transitioning into coaching?
Yeah. It's probably in this day and age probably the biggest question for anyone who's involved in rugby, who's a black person, not necessarily a white person. It goes without saying that rugby predominantly, and I say predominantly because rugby was played in the Eastern Cape for long ago.
Yeah.
Rugby was played in the Cape, in the Western Cape long ago, but itself is a predominantly white sport.
Yeah.
And we are no doubt a minority.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about black people. Are no doubt they're a minority in rugby. And it would be a lie for me to say that I haven't had adverse experience in rugby in terms of whether by virtue of age or by virtue of the color of my skin, but all of it is actually context and background. My dad wasn't a Springbok.
Okay.
My dad wasn't. We don't come from a rugby background.
Yeah.
My son might grow up in a rugby background, but I don't come from a rugby background.
Yeah.
So I don't what you call have rugby lineage and heritage. Did you get what I'm trying to say? So that obviously was a challenge.
How did you deal with those things? So, like, you've mentioned now more than once that I was the first to do this thing. I'm the only one in my family that does this thing. The mental pressures, like what are some of the thoughts that go through your mind, especially earlier on where you're young, you're playing for the Sevens, you're then, you were quite active from a very young age in the sport. So what is the mental process? What are the challenges that one might engage with?
Look, when you grow up, you sometimes you're not conscious of it, but you know you're a minority.
Right.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Right.
So it's and perhaps it's something I'm conscious of now as a coach and trying to get groups together is you only room with the black guy. You know, when
Yeah.
you go on tour, as an example,
Yes.
because
Yes.
that's sort of what you do. But you're young, right? So you're conscious of it, but it's actually subconscious. Because you don't really voice it, and you don't understand how to voice it.
Would you say maybe you don't have language for it?
Precisely.
You're experiencing this thing, but you don't know what it is that you're experiencing
Yeah.
per se. Okay.
And I've been fortunate also. I'm speaking about the adverse part, but similarly, I've been fortunate to have played in teams, groups under coaches who didn't really make you feel out of it.
Okay.
You know, and
Okay.
that wasn't always the case, but I think some people didn't go through that. I mean, so you know, the school where we went from a primary school point of view. I mean, if I think of a guy called Mr. Van der Heever, if I think of a guy called Mr. Pretorius, Van Straten, Lynch, you know, those guys, the fact that I remember them, I think
Yeah.
one is indicative of a positive influence they had on me.
Yeah.
But two, we fortunate to have gone to at that time, although it was a Model C school, almost a demographically representative school.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
had white and friends alike,
Yeah.
black friends alike.
Yeah.
You know,
We
we
had
had
everyone.
precisely, and I think
Yeah.
we maybe took that for granted.
We didn't know.
Precisely.
We didn't know that, like, what that meant to have everyone, or that experience of having everyone. Yeah.
And sometimes you catch on things later, right? You think,
Correct.
yes, boys, there were only 5 of us in that team, 5 black guys in the team. It's crazy.
Yeah.
In this day and age, would that ever happen?
Yeah.
So I think that also creates an awareness in you.
Yeah.
And as I've come up again, going to Cares was a demographic representative school, but even then, you know, you experience, and sometimes not by design, it's by what the system looks like. You know, it's not by design. It's, are you a provincial player because you're actually a black guy? No, I'm a provincial player because I think I'm good and I think I've got ability to play rugby.
Did you go through those moments of doubt? Like, am I chosen? Because, you know, I think for correction in sports and other fields where then you need representation, it can get into your mind that, am I here because I'm good enough, or am I here because of the color of my skin? Like, for me, psychology, it's the same thing, where correction for what has happened in the past, there's a pressure for representation of what this country looks like, right? And it can get into your mind like, was I chosen because I'm good enough? Or, you know, was I chosen because of the color of my skin? Some people might even give you that feedback.
Look, if you don't, I don't know anyone who hasn't thought, or whose mind it hasn't crossed. Because the one thing about rugby is, let's for all intents and purposes, at the time they were called quotas, then now they're called transformation targets. Okay, and at the time the team had to have X amount of black players and X amount of white players.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And at the time of my growing up, there were more white players than there were black players.
Yeah.
Now it's actually even.
Okay.
So any national team will have an even amount of black or white people.
This might be, I mean, it's not surprising for you, but I don't know much
yeah.
about the sport. So
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me,
yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, so there's actual real shifts happening,
Yeah,
tangible shifts
they're
happening.
incredible shifts happening.
Okay.
But again, to go back to your point, I can't sit here and say that thought never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And what it does is it can affect you two ways, right?
Yeah.
And at times it affects you like, yes, you guys, this is what we are. And rugby is also has a massive Afrikaans heritage.
Yes.
And not skin color is not just a barrier. Language is a barrier.
Yes.
I'll never forget under 13 Craven Week, the coach, coached mainly in Afrikaans.
Okay.
You know that.
Okay.
So that's a barrier in
tough.
itself. Eh?
Yeah.
And the irony of me coaching Afrikaans guys and me coaching in Afrikaans is ironic, right?
You coach in Afrikaans?
Well, my part of accommodating me as a coach.
Yeah.
Part of accommodating the players that I coach is, if a guy can speak Sesotho, I've got to speak to him in Sesotho. If it's Xhosa,
Okay.
if it's Zulu, if it's Afrikaans, then he feels like he's part of something.
Okay.
Not the way I felt as a 13-year-old.
Right.
And I was just so excited to go to the Craven Week. Couldn't give a continental what the guy said.
Yeah.
I just got the ball and ran.
Continent.
Do
Okay.
you understand what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say? So it's skin color barrier, but language is also a barrier.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that you actually have to be very multi-layered to coach. You need to be very multi-layered. You're getting people from different kinds of contexts, and you accommodate for that. It's not everybody that's conscious of that, though. It's not everybody that's intentional about that. So the fact that you're doing that, I think, is amazing and great. I think it's probably part of the reason why then there's tangible, transformation and all of that. Tell me about your transition into coaching. When do you say, you were telling me off air now, like my body's battered, hopelang, like I'm done. So what happens? When do you get to a point where you say, I'm done playing, I now want to veer off in this direction?
I think that thought came to me at university. I started coaching at a very young age.
Okay.
I think when you're a youngster, everyone pursues the dream of becoming a Springbok.
Yeah.
I knew early days that maybe I'm not as capable of being a Springbok physically in terms of playing.
Okay.
There were just other guys who were better than me.
Okay.
That
is such a sorry to interrupt you. That is such a humble perspective to take. It takes a lot to, there are people who don't realize how far they can take something, and then they close themselves off to other doors that this thing can take them into.
Yeah, I was coming towards the end of my studies and I realized, listen, I've got to make a decision. Am I going to go and work, or am I going to chase the dream? But I mean, one's got to be honest with yourself. And I think one thing I do well, I don't do many things well, but I think I've got the ability to be self-critical. And I knew I wasn't going to become a Springbok, let alone play 100 games for the Lions or the Stormers or whatever. So, but I love rugby and I wanted to stay involved. I'd coached a little bit just to earn a bit extra money, but it's something that grew on me.
Okay.
And I realized that for me to stay in rugby and for me to really still enjoy what I wanted to do, coaching was another avenue.
Yeah.
For me to explore. And fortunately for me, I received 1 or 2 opportunities along the way that's allowed me to be where I am right now.
Yeah. Okay. In psychology, we have a terminology called radical acceptance. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't.
Okay. I'm not going to get into jargon. Radical acceptance in layman's terms is the ability to accept what is, as is, the reality of what is. And there's such a thread in your story today that you're telling me about, where you, be it gratitude, this is what I got from my parents, this is what I got from my childhood, to this is what I got from sporting, this is how far. You've just got that element of radical acceptance in you, and then making that work. I find that so admirable.
Look, I think it sounds like a nice term, but I have a vivid memory of the day I stopped playing rugby. Cold winter's day, I just finished training at university, and I realized I don't think this is for me. I think I can find more joy out of coaching than what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And if we're honest, the future doesn't look necessarily too bright for me from a playing perspective.
Right.
Maybe try my hand at coaching. So there is, call it radical acceptance, but also just honesty.
Okay.
And I'd reached a T-junction in my life, and I needed to make a call, and I had to make that call.
So then you go into coaching.
DreamStream, a place to create yourself. Record video, music, and podcast in our full-service studio. DreamStream, a place to create yourself. Record video, music, and podcast in our full-service studio. DreamStream, a place to create yourself.
How's that been for you?
It's been the most rewarding journey of my life, apart from becoming a parent.
Okay.
The thing about coaching is you think about the amount of people who you've worked under, being coached by, and it doesn't have to be in sport per se.
Mm-hmm.
Think about your lecturer, think about your tutor, think about your whoever administers your masters and your postgraduate studies. Those people have an impact and a real impact. Some not so much, but some are.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to have played under guys who made a real impact in my life from a coaching perspective.
Okay.
And I wanted that when I became a coach. I wanted that for other people to experience.
Mm.
And again, I'll be the first to say I don't always get it right. And part of coaching is coaching. It's not just coaching the X and O's. Run there, turn left, turn right. There's the game plan. Is we coach human beings. Ironically, there's such a massive psychology to coaching.
To sports in general.
Precisely.
Yeah.
There's so many people I know a lot of the people who I look up to actually do psychology to really get exceptional at human organization, human behavior, understanding human behavior,
Yeah.
effecting change in humans.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been rewarding to see kids I coached at school at professional level become dads, become professional sportsmen,
Yeah.
become businessmen, to
Yeah.
bump into them. Last weekend was the rugby, the amount of players, ex-players we bumped into. So that's rewarding for me.
Yeah. Have you ever engaged in any form of either sports psychology or personal psychology or therapy for yourself?
No doubt, I have to.
You do.
Uh, uh,
Okay.
we have to. Never mind, we do. We have to.
Yeah.
The challenge for us is we again, coaching is more than X and O's.
Mm.
We carry so much baggage
Mm.
with us.
So is it a prerequisite for your players?
It's not a prerequisite, but what I encourage, we make use of psychologists,
Okay.
sports psychologists. Recently, and you can speak to how we can demystify psychology,
Okay.
but performance coaches,
Mm-hmm.
but mental performance coaches.
Yeah.
So we make use of that because we've got to get, how do we get the best out of Pupulang?
Yes.
Pupulang is a sprinter. She's an amazing rugby player.
Yes.
How do I get the best out of her?
Yeah.
Notwithstanding that she's a mom, she's got a profession. There's a whole variety of
Yeah.
things that happen.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the more I realize that, coaching is the last thing, or the game is the last thing. How do we get the best out of you?
Yeah.
And psychology is we will speak now about performance coaches,
Yeah.
and because we've got to demystify psychology.
Yeah. What do you mean by demystify psychology?
So
what are you seeing out there?
In sport, what I hear
Yeah.
and what I feel is when you hear psychologists about issues.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
understand?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I see a performance enhancement coach,
Okay.
whilst they're doing the same job, the title is different.
Yeah.
And all I hear is they can make me better, but these people are making me better.
Yeah.
And I mustn't only see them when I need to see them. I
Yes.
must see them so that I can actually be really good
Yeah.
going forward, as opposed to, okay, I've broken down now. This is happening. These pillars are crashing. I don't know if you get the point that I'm making.
Yeah, it's very common. It's not only in sports. So I think just mental health, psychology, those words, those terminologies, there's a lot of stigma around it. They get a bad rep, and a lot of people come to see me when there's a crisis, which is fine. I always say, like, something brings you. But I think the conversation needs to start to, and a lot of people are having the conversation now to educate and psychoeducate a lot of us, which is, what is the use of psychology? It can be a weekly way of aligning yourself. It's preventative. Let's prevent certain things. Also, I'll say things like, we all have something, even if it's not a formal diagnosis, right? We all have something. Why? Because we're all living life. The human experience is very complex and complicated. So the same way you'll go to a dentist, the same way if you're spiritual, go to church, the same way you realize that socializing is important. There's something about the mental and the emotional and the psychological and that link that is important. So in a high performance field like yours, that is very important.
Yeah, I mean, if you're to perform in front of 20,000 people,
Yeah.
you need to have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And the fallout for not having your ducks in a row is even greater.
Yeah.
If you haven't engaged in the psychology of it, and if you haven't
even that physical performance, it's a lot of mental.
100%.
It's a lot of mental to push yourself. You're talking about, it was cold. I said, no, thank you. This is not
cool.
That's a lot of mental
Sacrifice.
that goes into it. Off air, you were saying to me how when you're, as a coach, when you're not performing, you stay off social media, or even like your family stays off social media because they get like protective of you. So that's a lot of
there's so many aspects to it.
yeah.
It's one, how do I get myself, as you alluded to, get right to perform?
Yeah.
Because in the industry that we're in, the currency is winning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do I make sure that I win
Yeah.
often, and often enough for it to be really often?
Yeah.
And winning is a byproduct.
Right.
How do I get mental right? Because life at home doesn't stop.
Right.
Life outside of home doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Again, speaking to not who we are, but what we do.
Yeah.
So it's what I do, and I need to be really good at that.
Yeah.
But I've still got to be a father, I've still got to be a husband, I've still got to be that, I've still got to be that. I've got to be a
it all
friend, I've got to be a
filters.
son, I've got to be a cousin, I've got to be a sibling.
Yeah.
And that, I think, performance enhancing psychology there helps you. This is a byproduct of if you get all that stuff right.
Yeah. And psychoeducate me. Is it the same like we see in soccer? So with coaches in soccer, you lose, you out. Like the turnover rate with coaches is like, it's a bit intense. Is it the same in
Look,
rugby?
it's intense in general. I think what rugby has is camaraderie and a feel and a love for each other.
Yeah.
So for us to really leave each other, then we must then done. But
Okay.
but again, our currency is winning, and if you don't win, understand that there's going to be repercussions around that.
Yeah.
And more often than not for coaches, those repercussions mean they'll find another person to do a job.
Yeah. And it's not for everyone. I've had the privilege of knowing you for many years. You've always had a winner's mindset. Like, you've always had this thing about you where, okay, this doesn't work, let's move, or not be satisfied. You've said it about 3 times now that I'm self-critical. So it's not for everyone as well, would you say? Yeah.
Look, it's not for the faint-hearted. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that for free. And the reason I say that is, I always say to our players, none put a gun to your head and said be a pro rugby player. None put a gun to your head and said be a rugby coach. We live. It's probably the wrong term, but I feel like we live in constant PTSD.
Yeah.
Like we're in anxiety for the game that's coming.
Okay.
We're suffering from the emotional baggage of the last game,
Yeah.
and we're just constantly in that cycle. Whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, and we've got to find ways and methods in which you deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because that's what high performance looks like.
Nobody put a gun to you.
Yeah.
Only
it's a challenge.
you would say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it isn't for everyone. It's let's use psychology. You need to have a whole lot of maturity and I call it bandwidth to deal with all the stuff that you deal with.
Yeah. You need a muscle. There's a muscle for it.
And
Yeah.
we don't have that ability.
Yeah.
I don't have the bandwidth to deal with. I can only deal with one problem at a time,
Right.
and my problems.
Yeah.
Other people, as an example, you deal with other people's problems, and then some, and then your
And
then
then
your
my
own. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm grateful that I've got the talent for it,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's for everyone.
Yeah.
To live in that state is challenging.
Yeah. Let's move away from sports, right? It's what you do. It's not who you are.
100%.
You are a husband. I saw your wife. So as I'm doing my research, I'm like, of course he married a model. Of course he married a model. She was gorgeous.
Look.
Your
I
wife
think
is
she's
so
fortunate.
beautiful. She's fortunate. What do you
Yes,
mean?
yes. I mean, guys, just to get the cameras here.
Guys,
I'm joking. I'm joking.
your wife is gonna watch this and be like,
She's beautiful. She's a belter.
she's gorgeous. She's gorgeous. But when I saw the pictures, and I was like, of course he married a model. Of course he got married. I always just got that sense of, like, you were always that guy. I wasn't surprised. Would you agree? Like,
I don't know.
like, does your life surprise you?
It does
What
sometimes.
really? What
Yeah,
I've come to see of your life doesn't surprise me.
Look, I must be honest. I'm punching well above my weight in terms of my wife.
Yes.
She's in a different league to what I am in. And I understand that. Smart lady.
Yeah. You said she's an educational psychologist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unreal at math. Like, I'm so rubbish at maths. It's scary. And she's good.
Yeah.
And again, I'm grateful for we've journeyed together for a long time.
Yeah.
Ups and downs, and she stuck with me.
She stuck with you. So
yeah,
you were
she's-
the problem child in that.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Stuck with me. And we've managed to build a house and a home and a family together, and we hope we can carry on in that manner. But she's an unreal person, in that she didn't. I mean, she was an netball player herself, but so you got to be smart.
Gotta be smart.
You got to be smart. You got to marry
Yeah.
a netball player. She's taller than me.
Yeah.
No son is shorter than their mom.
Yeah.
So you can understand. I'm building a
Okay.
pension fund.
I see
You know,
you.
that
I
means
see
up
you.
here is gonna grow up being a really tall guy.
Yeah.
And hopefully
yeah.
he can also be a Springbok one day.
He is so adorable. I saw he started school.
Yeah, he started school.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, she's. I think the nice thing about us is she's independent herself. Actually, undergrad in psychology.
Yeah.
Obviously postgrad in psych.
Yeah.
But because she's a math boffin, she teaches applied mathematics.
Okay. Oh, what an interesting household. Your son
Yeah.
is going to have so many options. What an interesting household.
Yeah, so he's definitely not getting brains from me.
Well, okay.
But yeah. So I think my life does surprise me. The amount of grace that I've
Mm,
received up to this point. Um, but I'm not surprised by I'd like to think I'm a go getter, so that doesn't surprise me. But I'm surprised that I didn't imagine I'd get married so young. I didn't imagine that I'd have a family so young. Um, Young obviously is relative,
no, you're still
but
young. You're still young.
but yeah, and it's been like I said to you, having kids, having a family is an unreal journey. It's a really good. It actually moves you away from it takes away the ego away from
Okay. Okay, it grounds you.
you. Of course it does.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you could have lost the biggest game and you walk in and my son, when he hears my door with the door open, he runs. But he runs.
Oh.
You can't be angry at that.
Yeah.
No matter what the result was where you
Yeah.
came from, you
Yeah.
can't be sour at that. So for me, that makes a hell of a difference.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm gonna leave it at that beautiful place. But we have a tradition here at home where may feel uncomfortable. Don't worry, I'm not gonna do anything to you.
No, no
I'm
worries.
gonna ask you to close your eyes.
Okay.
Okay. Close your eyes and just take a deep breath. Trust me, trust me. So close your eyes and I want you to tune into your five senses. Just see the images in your mind, focus on what you can hear, smell, and what you are touching right now. And I want you to think of the phrase blooming but I fly. Mzwakhe Nkosi, blooming but I fly. And for the next 30 seconds, just think out loud with me in terms of what comes up for you. What's next for you?
What's next for me is funny. I at that image, it's just spring. I'm seeing the green sprouts out of the grass come up again in my garden. I've just planted new flowers actually. So I've got a spring vibe and a blooming vibe. Um, I think what's next for me is I see progress in coaching. I might not be next, but the end goal is to uh, standing on in a coaching box on a field, singing the anthem again, and hopefully that's sometime soon for a South African national team for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so much. What a lovely life journey. What a lovely story.
thank you for unraveling this. One doesn't get an opportunity to reflect, and I felt like today I got to reflect on where I come from actually.
Lovely. Lovely. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. I really hope that you will enjoy learning more about, the man behind the man and getting a bit of a perspective of, his life journey, which, we all have our own. And as he said, he got an opportunity to reflect. So hopefully you'll get an opportunity to reflect on your own. And I will see you again next time. Bye bye.